must be allowed home. They must be allowed to rebuild, and we should be with them in that rebuild on the way to a two-state solution.
Welcome back to America Decides. Prime Minister's questions on Wednesday in the United Kingdom. That was British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, a Labour Party leader, expressing his disapproval of President Trump's proposal to, quote, take over Gaza. Let's bring in editor-in-chief of Foreign Policy magazine, Ravi Agrawal. Appreciate you being here. The UK and Saudi Arabia are among those U.S. allies who are condemning the proposal. What more are you hearing about the global reaction?
Well, the global reaction, by and large, has just been one of bewilderment and then also rejecting Trump's calls. I mean, first of all, there's the humanitarian concerns. These are 2 million people who call Gaza home, despite all of the problems that have been cited. This is their home. They have displayed that they want to stay and they don't want to be moved out, least of all forcibly. And second is international law. Forced displacements, they go against the Geneva Convention. It's a violation of international law. It's a war crime. It is a crime against humanity. And that is why a range of countries have come out and said that this absolutely just won't work for them. Trump yesterday, when he was talking about this, kept making references to how the plan was being cheered around the world, but really by whom? Egypt and Jordan have categorically said no to taking in more Palestinians. Saudi Arabia has said that there's no deal with Israel if this happens. And European allies like France and the UK, as we just heard, have clearly reiterated their support for a two-state solution, even Russia and China. So not much support.
What about President Trump's negotiating style, whether it's tariffs or other fronts? He often takes a position that some of his critics might say is extreme as a way of trying to create leverage. Is that part of what you see here?
Possibly. It could be that Trump is floating a controversial idea as a trial balloon, taking a maximalist position in the hope of maybe then reaching some sort of a middle ground. But this is a high-risk, high-stakes strategy that could easily backfire in a variety of ways. I mean, first of all, this could turbocharge anti-American sentiment in the Middle East and around the world. Second, this could, in some senses, jeopardize what is and has been a very fragile peace deal, a ceasefire deal between Hamas and the Israelis. But third, this is simply, unlike tariffs, which Trump genuinely believes in, this is not ideologically consistent. Trump has always said he's a peacemaker. He rails against U.S. excesses abroad, including the Iraq War. America first, as he's put it, is about retreating from the world, not solving everyone's problems. This Gaza plan, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. It is taking over, to use his phrase, a massive problem, would likely entail boots on the ground, is illegal, and would entail years of involvement that could backfire in any number of ways.
What is the potential effect here, if any, on the ceasefire that's currently playing out?
So the ceasefire deal is fragile. I mean, if you put yourself in Hamas's shoes for a minute, this invocation of a forced movement of up to 2 million Palestinians, it rubs at, probably the sorest spot in Palestinian memory. Anyone who studied the region will know about what Palestinians call the Nakba, when, many hundreds of thousands of them were forced out of their homes. And the very notion of that happening again is one that will roil Palestinians in a way that, destabilizes their sentiment, destabilizes any sort of willingness they have to take part in the ceasefire deal. And that is really, as I said, a high-stakes kind of maneuver on Trump's part, even if you don't take it at face value, even if you see it as a maximalist approach that I think will only jeopardize what has been a fragile ceasefire deal.
And finally, what does this mean in terms of how groups like Hamas are reacting on the ground? What are you learning about what the reaction is among some of the antagonists on the ground?
Look, in some ways, I mean, they are going to react to this in the here and now by saying this is impossible, it's never going to happen. Public sentiment on the ground, not only in Gaza, but across the Arab world, is really in favor of a two-state solution. I think what happens when Trump floats something that is so outlandish, And again, this is not something that he just threw out there in isolation. He threw out this plan standing side by side with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. What this then does is it further corrodes American soft power. It further advances the idea that America does not care about international law, about rules and norms. And in many senses, it's a boost for anyone who wishes America ill. So all of those adversaries you're talking about, they can use moments like this to say, look, we're not dealing with a reasonable actor here. This hurts America.
Ravi, thank you for stopping by. We appreciate your analysis and your reporting.
Pleasure.